For an engineer who is interfacing with these things, there are 5 different things that you need to prepare your mind. The first thing is understanding basic audio system, and then concept. Then number 2, science of sound. It is science because when we start describing sound now, it is something that we don't see, but we believe it exists. And so the only part of our body that sense the presence of sound is our ear and our body. But our eyes, we can't see sound. So that makes it science. Science. So you have to know these ones also. So the third one is music. Now, my brother from Aba is having this digital mixer. And he has spent his life listening to Osadebe, Oliver de Cook, Morocco, and several other artists. So you see, his understanding of those genre of music will make him to now use the mixer to get that kind of texture, that kind of timbrality, you know. So that is for this. Then the fourth aspect is psychology. Now, psychology is very wide, really very wide. Psychology cut across mood and state of mind. For a hymnal service, you are playing classical that has to do with a lot of pipe organ, strings, violin, and all that. Imagine you mixing for that kind of thing. I mean, that kind of sound. You need to understand the psychology, the genre of music. You need to understand everything that has to do with you bringing various sound to appeal to human mind. No wonder these days we are talking about sound in house of worship. Almost all our songs, most of our songs are really going towards Hillsong. Remember the Hillsong that has been in existence for more than 20 years ago. Trust me, when I was growing up, I didn't really like Hillsong. But today is one of my best. Every element in the mix, in the music, including the instrument on stage, all add up to that kind of ambience and space in worshiping our Maker. So that is Hillsong. No wonder when you are in that space, people literally cry. People literally shed tears. People literally be in sober reflection because the sound and everything enables that environment. So that's it's also the psychological part. But permit me to separate spirits from psychology, because I believe psychology has to do with 5 senses of human reasoning. You know, everything that make up our nervous system, right, is here. So I believe when you are talking about psychology, we are still in the realm, the physical realm, where we relate with 5 senses. So when you take it up to this other thing, because up to today, some people in church, I'm always talking about church because I'm a church boy, and every day, everything you see us doing today is to see how we can use it in house of God, and to see how this, at the end of the day, glorify God. So as I always talk about things, sound, and I'm talking about church, because truly that's my essence, that's my being, that's why I am here. So in a church setting where atmosphere is intense, some people will just be looking, what is happening to that person now? Are you here to add drama? I mean that person is truly referring to somebody that is rolling on the floor. At that time, in fact, your 5 senses are not active. we are actually in another realm. Like I said, psychology is more of physical realm. So this spirit being is another dimension of reasoning. And sometimes this reasoning is when you align your spirit with the spirit of God. And so when you see us doing sound, and when you see me doing some mix, I actually think about this spirit dimension of sound, which is why you can actually testify that there's always something in the sound that you cannot explain. There's something that when you feel, some people they don't really know how to describe this kind of sensation they feel. So somehow they can just summarize it as goosebumps. But beyond goosebumps, there are frequencies that we cannot explain. So, and that's why we stand for, and that is also why I am here preaching. I am actually an apostle of sound, right? So it's just to talk this talk for as many of you guys that are just doing sound because it's leisure, it's a passion, it is because I love sound, I love music. That no, beyond that aspect, there are some things you do that is winning soul somewhere. So that soul that is won will be credited into your account. So if you see from this dimension, I'm sure every day of your life, when you are touching your console, is not just in a carnal form, you know. Most of the time, I'll pray and allow God to direct my hand and do anything. So that sometimes when you see me mixing, it's not just one way. You can't even predict how the sound will be at the end of the day. So permit me to say, most of my mix are spontaneous. And when I talk about deep mix, it's not just the mix in the box, but it's live sound production. Yeah. So there are dimensions. So did I say 5? Okay, let me just add. I wasn't thinking about this spirit before, but let's just add one as let me just say operational procedures. This has to do with the gadgets that you are using to achieve your end result. How well do you know these things? Which is why a manufacturer will try to document at least basic manual for you to at least read and understand some things. I always say that the dispensation we are has actually made us to be so lazy. I remember back then, in fact, in secondary school, they will get one Macbeth, Lord of the Flies series. Some of them might be almost 500, 600 pages. You have to read everything because as literature was one of your subject in school. I'm not referring to high school, secondary school. And that's just one. Beyond mathematics, and beyond mathematics, we even have further maths that sometimes you won't understand because it's very complex. That's some form of calculation there. They just name them as complex calculus, add math, all those things. So I'm asking you now, how were we able to pass those examinations? Remember at that time, there was no internet. Computer was just in one of the richest countries, So life was fit back in the days. And truly, what has been playing back in the days, they are more of your natural intelligence. There was nothing like AI, artificial intelligence, There was nothing like AI. So I believe that we can bring back those good old memory and inject them into this system to get the best out of it. As you are all aware, it's not all about having the best and sophisticated gadget. Yes, I can actually testify that sophisticated gadget can add something good to you, but it is 100% dependent on how well you know how to operate the gadget. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Let me tell you about myself. There's the way my brain is wired. For instance, when you give me Allen and Earth, for instance, GL2400 as the mixing console for me to use, at that time, my brain will be recalibrating to see how the sound I know is brought back to this Allen and Earth to give me the end result, which is almost like I'm using digital mixer. So, if I'm using Allen and Earth, for instance, I know it is purely what? It is purely analog console. So the only thing we have on board might just be parametric EQ and some few buses. Now this digital console has actually spoiled us with a lot. Sometimes some of the things at a time might not be necessary. So again, which is why when I have so much, I don't actually dig deep to use everything in a function or event. I just recall few things that is needed to make this sound larger than life. So it has been told that to whom much is given, more is expected. So to whom much is given in terms of hardwares, I necessarily don't need to go in there and exhaust everything in a function or programs. All I need to do is just what is necessary for us, which is why today we are discussing about the basic thing that is common in all digital mixer. Right from, let's say from XL18 down to up to Midas Pro X series and above, SSL and all that. Something is always common, which is PE, PEQ, gate and compressor. So just before we dive into this, try and study your tool. If you are a friend of our mix engineer, study that. If you are a stage mix engineer, you have to know everything about this, about psychology, about stage. Using this system, you have to understand temperament of each of these guys, which is what I have been telling my guys before now, that for you to function in live sound, you must first of all possess fruit of the spirit, and there's no way you have this fruit of the spirit if you don't have the spirit of God. Sometimes they can step on you and you want to say something, and something will just tell you, tap you, no. Guy, you are a servant leader. You are a servant leader. So please just ignore. And that's me, truly. So while you are doing your work, everything is moving fine. And at the end of the day, we have good sound.